Welcome, fellow moderators. I got to figure out how I can take myself out. It'd be cool if I wasn't a moderator and everybody else was. That'd be pretty neat. So, yes, mods for life. Let's see here. I don't know how many people are going to show up. I know somebody on the Discord was saying that they're kind of sad that they were missing out on the end of the conversation. And I thought if we don't get more than 5 people or whatever here, maybe I just reschedule and we got 5 people already. So apparently this chapter reading is going to be much bigger than I thought. And I wonder if I'm too loud. Am I peaking here? I adjusted my microphone so I could speak. 6 people watching. So, yep, it looks like people are tuning in for the exciting conclusion of Breakfast of Champions. Here it is, everybody. Breakfast of Champions. A little soft, huh? Really? Let me look and see if my microphone is... I've done this before. Sometimes it will start up and my microphone is at half volume. Yeah, it's at half volume. So there we go. I'll cough a bunch into the microphone now. Oh, you can't wait to the end? Are you? I think I just was talking to you on the Discord and you said you were tired, so I didn't want to keep you up. I was willing to reschedule if we didn't have a handful of people here for this conclusion, and hopefully I don't cry because I'm so emotional these days. I'm going to drink a glass of water here before I start. All right, so when we left, they were loading all the victims of Dwayne's rampage into the Martha bus, and it ends with etc., which is it's kind of a running theme at Vonnegut. The phrases "and so on," "and so it goes," etc. It's part of his simple prose, which also is a very efficient prose. I think his writing is amazing in its simplicity and also complexity. It's very to the point, but he never, tries to be pretentious with his words. It makes me laugh with the because that was the conversation at dinner with my partner and our daughter, was the appropriateness of saying these things and how to respond, and how I there was probably a better path forward than the one that I took, but I'm trying. And yeah, David, it feels like I'm far more emotional than... I don't think I cried when I read this book when I was 15. I don't think it even moved me that way, but later on when I read it, it did. And Huckleberry Finn, I think also, if I remember right, there's a part in there that upset me when I was older too. So this chapter is bittersweet. So here goes. And again, to anybody joining us who hasn't been here, which I think everybody has already been here, I read the chapter, feel free to chat, but I don't stop to address any comments in chat until after I'm done with the chapter. Epilogue. The emergency room of the hospital was in the basement. After Kilgore Trout had the stump of his ring finger disinfected and trimmed and bandaged, he was told to go upstairs to the finance office. There were certain forms he had to fill out, since he was from outside Midland County. He had no health insurance and was destitute. He had no checkbook. He had no cash. He got lost in the basement for a little while, as a lot of people did. He found the double doors to the morgue, as a lot of people did. He automatically mooned about his own mortality, as a lot of people did. He found an x-ray room, which wasn't in use. They made him wonder automatically if anything bad was growing inside himself. Other people had wondered exactly the same thing when they passed that room. Trout felt nothing now that millions of other people wouldn't have felt automatically. And Trout found stairs, but they were the wrong stairs. They led him not to the lobby and the finance office and the gift shop and all that, but into a matrix of rooms where persons were recovering or failing to recover from injuries of all kinds. Many of the people there had been flung to the earth by the force of gravity, which never relaxed for a second. Trout passed a very expensive private room now, and there was a young black man in there with a white telephone and color television set and boxes of candy and bouquets of flowers all around. He was Elgin Washington, a pimp who operated out of the Holiday Inn. He was only 26 years old, but he was fabulously well-to-do. Visiting hours had ended, so all his female sex slaves had departed, but they left clouds of perfume behind. Trout gagged as he passed the door. It was an automatic reaction to the fundamentally unfriendly cloud. Elgin Washington had just sniffed cocaine into his sinus passages, which amplified tremendously the telepathic messages he sent and received. He felt 100 times bigger than life because the messages were so loud and exciting. It was their nose that thrilled him. He didn't care what they said. It was their noise that thrilled him. He didn't care what they said. And in the midst of the uproar, Elgin Washington said something wheedlingly to Trout. Hey man, he wheedled. He had his foot amputated earlier in the day by Kajdar miasma, but he had forgotten that. Hey man, he coaxed. He wanted nothing particular from Trout. Some part of his mind was idly exercising his skill at making strangers come to him. He was a fisherman for men's souls. Hey man, he said. He showed a gold tooth. He winked an eye. Trout came to the foot of the black man's bed. This wasn't compassion on his part. He was being machinery again. Trout was, like so many earthlings, a fully automatic boob when a pathological personality like Elgin Washington told him what to do, what to want. Both men, incidentally, were descendants of the Emperor Charlemagne. Anybody with any European blood in him was a descendant of the Emperor Charlemagne. Elgin Washington perceived that he had caught yet another human being without really meaning to. It was not in his nature to let one go without making him feel in some way diminished, in some way a fool. So he actually killed a man. Sometimes he actually killed a man in order to diminish him. But he was gentle with Trout. He closed his eyes as though thinking hard. Then he earnestly said, I think I may be dying. I'll get a nurse, said Trout. Any human being would have said exactly the same thing. No, said Elgin Washington, waving his hands in dreamy protest. I'm dying slow. It's gradual. I see, said Trout. You got to do me a favor, said Washington. He had no idea what favor to ask. It would come to him. Ideas for favors always came. What favor, said Trout uneasily. He stiffened at the mention of an unspecified favor. He was that kind of a machine. Washington knew he was stiffen. Every human being was that kind of machine. I want you to listen to me while I whistle the song of the nightingale, he said. He commanded Trout to be silent by giving him the evil eye. What adds peculiar beauty to the call of the nightingale, much beloved by poets, he said, is the fact that it will only sing by moonlight. Then he did what almost every black person in Midland City would do. He imitated a nightingale. The Midland City Festival of the Arts was postponed because of madness. Fred T. Berry, its chairman, came to the hospital in his limousine dressed like a Chinaman to offer his sympathies to Beatrice Kiesler and Kilgore Trout. Trout could not be found anywhere. Beatrice Kiesler had been put to sleep with morphine. Kilgore Trout assumed that the arts festival would still take place that night. He had no money for any form of transportation, so he set out on foot. He began the 5-mile walk down Fairchild Boulevard toward a tiny amber dot at the other end. The dot was the Midland City Center for the Arts. He would make it grow by walking towards it. When his walking had made it big enough, it would swallow him up. There would be food inside. I was waiting to intercept him, about 6 blocks away. I sat in a Plymouth Duster I had rented from Avis with my Diners Club card. I had a paper tube in my mouth. It was stuffed with leaves. I set it on fire. It was a soigné thing to do. My penis was 3 inches long and 5 inches in diameter. Its diameter was a world's record as far as I knew. It slumbered now in my jockey shorts, and I got out of the car to stretch my legs, which was another soigné thing to do. I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm certain. I was among factories and warehouses. The streetlights were widely spaced and feeble. Parking lots were vacant, except for night watchmen's cars, which were here and there. There was no traffic on Fairchild Boulevard, which had once been the aorta of the town. The life had all been drained out of it by the interstate and the Robert F. Kennedy Inner Belt Expressway, which was built on the old right-of-way of the Monon Railroad. The Monon was defunct. Nobody slept in that part of town. Nobody lurked there. It was a system of forts at night, with high fences and alarms and with prowling dogs. They were killing machines. When I got out of my Plymouth Duster, I feared nothing. That was foolish of me. A rider off guard, since the materials with which he works are so dangerous, can expect agony as quick as a thunderclap. I was about to be attacked by a Doberman pinscher. He was the leading character in an earlier version of this book. Listen, that Doberman's name was Kazak. He patrolled the supply yard of the Maritimo Brothers construction company at night. Kazak's trainers, the people who explained to him what sort of planet he was on and what sort of animal he was, taught him that the creator of the universe wanted him to kill anything he could, catch, and to eat it too. In an earlier version of this book, I had Benjamin Davis, the black husband of Lottie Davis, Dwayne Hoover's maid, take care of Kazak. He threw raw meat down into the pit where Kazak lived in the daytime. He dragged Kazak into the pit at sunrise. He screamed at him and threw tennis balls at him at sundown. Then he turned him loose. Benjamin Davis was first trumpet with the Midland City Symphony Orchestra, but he got no pay for that, so he needed a real job. He wore a thick gown made of war surplus mattresses and chicken wire, so Kazak could not kill him. Kazak tried and tried. There were chunks of mattress and swatches of chicken wire all over the yard, and Kazak did his best to kill anybody who came too close to the fence which enclosed his planet. He leaped at people as though the fence weren't there. The fence bellied out toward the sidewalk everywhere. It looked as though someone had been shooting cannonballs at it from the inside. I should have noticed the queer shape of the fence when I got out of my automobile, when I did the soigné thing of lighting a cigarette. I should have known that a character as ferocious as Kazak would not easily cut out of a novel. Kazak was crouching behind a pile of bronze pipe, which the Maritimo brothers had bought cheap from a hijacker earlier that day. Kazak meant to kill and eat me. I turned my back to the fence, took a deep puff of my cigarette. Pall Malls would kill me by and by, and I mooned philosophically at the murky battlements of the old Kiesler mansion on the other side of the Fairchild Boulevard. Beatrice Kiesler had been raised in there. The most famous murders in the city's history had been committed there. Will Fairchild, the war hero and maternal uncle of Beatrice Kiesler, appeared one summer night in 1926 with a spring-filled rifle. He shot and killed 5 relatives, 3 servants, 2 policemen, and all of the animals in Kiesler's private zoo. He then shot himself through the heart. When an autopsy was performed on him, a tumor the size of a piece of birdshot was found in his brain. This was what caused the murders. After Kiesler lost the mansion at the start of the Great Depression, Fred T. Berry and his parents moved in. The old place was filled with the sounds of British birds. It was a silent property of the city now, and there was talk of making it into a museum where children could learn the history of Midland City as told by arrowheads and stuffed animals and white men's early artifacts. Fred T. Berry had offered to donate $500,000 to the proposed museum on one condition, that the first robe of magic and the early posters which advertised it be put on display. And he wanted the exhibit to show, too, how machines evolved just as animals, but with much greater speed. I gazed at the Kiesler mansion, never dreaming that a volcanic dog was about to erupt behind me. Kilgore Trout came nearer. I was almost indifferent to his approach, although we had momentous things to say to one another about my having created him. I thought instead of my paternal grandfather, who had been the first licensed architect in Indiana. He had designed some dream houses for Hoosier millionaires. There were mortuaries and guitar schools and cellar holes and parking lots now. I thought of my mother, who drove me around Indianapolis one time during the Great Depression to impress me with how rich and powerful my maternal grandfather had been. She showed me where his brewery had been, where some of his dream houses had been. Every one of the monuments was a cellar hole. Kilgore Trout was only half a block from his creator now, and slowing down, I worried him. I turned toward him so that my sinus cavities were where all telepathic messages were sent and received were lined up symmetrically with his. I told him this over and over telepathically. I have good news for you. Kazak sprung. I saw Kazak out of the corner of my eye. His eyes were pinwheels. His teeth were white daggers. His slobber was cyanide. His blood was nitroglycerin. He was floating towards me like a zeppelin, hanging lazily in the air. My eyes told my mind about him. My mind sent a message to my hypothalamus, told it to release the hormone CRF into the short vessels connecting my hypothalamus and my pituitary gland. The CRF inspired my pituitary gland to dump the hormone ACTH into my bloodstream. My pituitary had been making and storing ACTH for just such an occasion. And nearer the zeppelin came, and some of the ACTH in my bloodstream reached the outer shell of my adrenal gland, which had been making and storing glucocorticoids for emergencies. My adrenal gland added the glucocorticoids to my bloodstream. They went all over my body, changing glycogen and to glucose. Glucose was muscle food. It would help me fight like a wildcat or run like a deer. And nearer the Zeppelin came. My adrenal gland gave me a shot of adrenaline, too. I turned purple as my blood pressure skyrocketed. This adrenaline made my heart go like a burglar alarm. It also stood my hair on end. It also caused coagulants to pour into my bloodstream, so in case I was wounded, my vital juices wouldn't drain away. Everything in my body had done so far fell within normal operating procedures for a human machine. But my body took one defensive measure which I am told was without precedent in medical history. It may have happened because some short-wired circuited, or some gasket blew. At any rate, I also retracted my testicles into my abdominal cavity, pulled them into my fuselage like the landing gear of an airplane, and now they tell me that only surgery will bring them back down again. Be that as it may, Kilgore Trout watched me from half a block away, not knowing who I was, not knowing about Kazakh and what my body had done about Kazakh so far. Trout had had a full day already, but it wasn't over yet. Now he saw his creator leap completely over an automobile. I landed on my hands and knees in the middle of Fairchild Boulevard. Kazakh was flung back by the fence. Gravity took charge of him as it had taken charge of me. Gravity slammed him down on the concrete. Kazakh was knocked silly. Kilgore Trout turned away. He hastened anxiously back toward the hospital. I called out to him, but that only made him walk faster. So I jumped in my car and I chased him. I was still high as a kite on adrenaline and coagulants and all that. I didn't know yet that I had retracted my testicles in all the excitement. I felt only vague discomfort down there. Trout was cantering when I came alongside. I clocked him at 11 miles an hour, which was excellent for a man his age. He too was now full of adrenaline and coagulants and glucocorticoids. My windows were rolled down, and I called this to him. Whoa, whoa, Mr. Trout. Whoa, Mr. Trout. It slowed him down to be called by name. Whoa, I'm a friend, I said. He shuffled to a stop, leaned in panting exhaustion against a fence surrounding an appliance warehouse belonging to the General Electric Company. The company's monogram and motto hung in the night sky behind Kilgore Trout, whose eyes were wild. The motto was this. Let's see, I gotta put this up there. I can't see. Look, wrong page. Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to do it. There it is. Progress is our most important product. Mr. Trout, I said this from the unlightened interior of the car. You have nothing to fear. I bring you tidings of great joy. He was slow to get his breath back, so he wasn't much of a conversationalist at first. Are you from the Arts Festival? He said. His eyes rolled and rolled. I'm from the Everything Festival, I replied. The what? He said. I thought it would be a good idea to let him have a good look at me, and so attempted to flick on the dome light. I turned on the windshield washers instead. I turned them off again. My view of the lights of the county hospital was garbled by beads of water. I pulled out another switch, and it came away in my hand. It was a cigarette lighter, so I had no choice but to continue to speak from darkness. Mr. Trout, I said, I'm a novelist, and I created you for use in my books. Pardon me, he said. I'm your creator, I said. You're in the middle of a book right now, close to the end of it, actually. He said. Are there any questions you'd like to ask? Pardon me, he said. Feel free to ask anything you want about the past, about the future, I said. There's a Nobel Prize in your future. A what? He said. A Nobel Prize in medicine. Huh? He said. It was a non-committal sound. I've also arranged for you to have a reputable publisher from now on. No more beaver books for you. He said. If I were in your spot, I would certainly have lots of questions, I said. Do you have a gun? He said. I laughed there in the dark, tried to turn on the light again, activated the windshield washer again. I don't need a gun to control you, Mr. Trout. All I have to do is write down something about you, and that's it. Are you crazy? He said. No, I said. And I shattered his power to doubt me. I transported him to the Taj Mahal, and then to Venice, and then to Dar el Salaam, and then to the surface of the sun, where the flames could not consume him, and then back to Midland City again. The poor old man crashed to his knees. He reminded me of the way my mother and Bunny Hoover's mother used to act when somebody tried to take their photographs. As he cowered there, I transported him to the Bermuda of his childhood, had him contemplate the infertile egg of the Bermuda urn. I took him from there to the Indianapolis of my childhood. I put him in a circus crowd there. I had him see a man with locomotor ataxia and a woman with a goiter as big as a zucchini. I got out of my rented car. I did it noisily so his ears would tell him a lot about his creator, even if he was unwilling to use his eyes. I slammed the car door firmly. As I approached him from the driver's side of the car, I swiveled my feet some, so that my footsteps were not only deliberate, but gritty too. I stopped with the tips of my shoes in the rim of the narrow field of his downcast eyes. "Mr. Trout," I said gently, "I love you. I have broken your mind to pieces. I want to make it whole. I want you to feel a wholeness and inner harmony such as I have never allowed you to feel before. I want you to raise your eyes, to look at what I have in my hand. I had nothing in my hand, but such was my power over Trout that he would see in it whatever I wished him to see. I might have shown him a Helen of Troy, for instance, only 6 inches tall. "Mr. Trout," Kilgore, I said, "I hold in my hand a symbol of wholeness and harmony and nourishment. It is oriental in its simplicity, but we are Americans, Kilgore, and not Chinamen. We Americans require symbols which are richly colored and three-dimensional and juicy. Most of all, we hunger for symbols which have not been poisoned by great sins our nation has committed, such as slavery and genocide and criminal neglect, or by tin-horn commercial greed and cunning. Look up, Mr. Trout," I said, and I waited patiently. "Kilgore?" The old man looked up, and he had my father's wasted face when my father was a widower, when my father was an old man. He saw that I held an apple in my hand. "I am approaching my 50th birthday, Mr. Trout," I said. "I am cleansing and renewing myself for the very different sorts of years to come. Under similar spiritual conditions, Count Tolstoy freed his serfs. Thomas Jefferson freed his slaves. I'm going to set at liberty all the literary characters who have served me so loyally during my writing career. You are the only one I'm telling. For the others, tonight will be a night like any other night. Arise, Mr. Trout. You are free. You are free." I might have shaken his hand, but his right hand was injured, so our hands remained dangled at our sides. Bon voyage, I said. I disappeared. I somersaulted lazily and pleasantly through the void, which is my hiding place when I dematerialize. Trout's cries to me faded at the distance, as the distance between us increased. His voice was my father's voice. I heard my father. I saw my mother in the void. My mother stayed far, far away, because she had left me a legacy of suicide. A small hand mirror floated by. It was a leak, with a mother-of-pearl handle and frame. I captured it easily, held it up to my own right eye, which looked like this. There's the tear. Here is what Kilgore Trout cried out to me in my father's voice. "Make me young, make me young, make me young." And then it says, etc. So I think AB, you mentioned that etc. should be, he talked about etc. a lot earlier, and you mentioned something on your graveyard, and the book ends with etc. And then it's got him crying again. There he's crying. And I'll just read this again. I've already read it, but Kurt Vonnegut Jr. is the son and grandson of Indianapolis architects. They were painters, too. His only living sibling is a distinguished physicist who discovered, among other things, that silver iodide can sometimes make it snow or rain. This is Mr. Vonnegut's 7th novel. He wrote it mostly in New York City. His 6 children are full grown. All right. So, anyways. So my takeaway from it is that the sadness that I see is that Kilgore lives his life of suffering, and given the deterministic nature of the universe in which Vonnegut has created, he's just allowing himself to suffer more. He's asking, even though he knows there's part of him, he wants to go back, but he's going to experience the same suffering. So it's it's sad that that's the only joy he has, is the idea that he might be able to affect, his life might be different. And I think that's the sadness that is reflected in the eye there in Vonnegut's story. And also the abuse of the creator, and like the idea that he does throw in the notion at the end that he's the author of the story, but the story is kind of out of control, and that maybe he doesn't have as much control, and maybe Kilgore Trout and these other characters do, if the creator of the universe has created a situation in which he doesn't have control to keep the dog from attacking him. Even though he's written it, it's very meta. So, and David, you said you had you wanted to share your. Anybody's welcome to call in, and we can talk on voice, or you can type in chat, whatever you feel comfortable doing. Again, the book is just in my concluding thoughts. It was a book I read when I was really young that rejected most of the propaganda that we're taught, and it's a very anti-art type of novel that rejects the premises of traditional literary styles. And most importantly, it has this notion of the solipsism of a person thinking that they're the only ones in the world who is actually thinking and thoughtful and in control of their facilities. And it seems to be even more prescient these days to think that everyone around us is just an unthinking person who is doing things out of their control. I mean, a lot of people want to blame people for voting for Trump, but people who are voting for Trump or voted for Trump, they just have circumstances that led them to a faulty conclusion. Yeah, I think it's profound, and some of the writing I love. I love how he just made himself a machine in terms of his reactions to the stimuli. How he just makes it not about his feelings, but it's just the chemicals that are pulsing through his blood. Much in the same way, he talks about people not controlling their behavior because of what they ate for breakfast. So I love that theme of the story. David, you say your father would have asked to be made young. I mean, my father died of Parkinson's, and his last few years were just unbearable because he was not there, and he did not want to give up his life, even though it wasn't much of a life. And I think his dying words to me he said, "Just let me live my life," because he always thought that I was trying to control him, because he was diabetic, and he would, this is a really not an uplifting story, but he would do things and hurt himself. He would go outside and stub his toe, and then he'd end up in the hospital because he got an infection. So I was constantly trying to keep him out of trouble. And like his last words were, "I just want to live my life." And I'm like, life is what it is because it ends, and you got to deal with that. If everybody lived on, the world would be terrible because it would be full of people, but also life is special because it ends. So there we go. Yeah, it's rough. It's a rough thing to go through. Parkinson's, he always knew who I was, but he had a faulty perception of what was going on in the world. Yep. Outsmarting death is not something I keep telling people around. Like, I had two people in my family who just insisted on, and they were both men. They just insisted that they knew better than everybody else, and they should be able to live their life this way. My grandfather insisted that he needed to live by himself, and he was like 90 years old, and he was constantly falling, and then neighbors would find him in his own feces. And he still insisted that he didn't want to live with somebody. And as a result, he made everybody's life harder. My mom had to constantly fly out of state to take care of him in the hospital. She had to drive him all over the place. It was unbearable. My mom basically became a slave to these two people who had these various issues. And so my takeaway is, I don't want to do that to my loved ones. I'm looking forward to whenever I feel like I'm a burden, or they tell me I'm a burden, I should jump off a cliff or run a car into the ocean or something, because it was just like, it's watching my mom go through that, my sister go through that. It was an awful experience. Alzheimer's and dementia. Ironically, he got along much better when he was out of his mind. Yeah, parents, I never really got along that great with my dad, but it was like the Parkinson's just made it so in the end we had no relationship at all, and he even alienated my sister, who he was closest to, because his behavior was so erratic. Yeah, David, that's my takeaway, is that And that's like our own existence. We think about it. Like, I think, like, all the things I endured, could I have made any, would the choices have been any different for me? And if I was in the same environment, it would have turned out exactly the same. And so the idea that you would try to relitigate your life, knowing that, especially when you consider the factors that Vonnegut talks about, he talks about how the chemicals are the ones controlling you and thinking you. When you think of it in this context, if you are just a machine and you go back in time, you're just going to react to the stimuli in the same exact way. I think the book Timequake addresses this. I've only read Timequake once, and I don't remember much about it, but I think it's Timequake. I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up. Timequake talks about how living your life over, you would just be the same person. So let's see. Yeah, that's why it's bittersweet. I mean, it's nice that Vonnegut's saying you're going to be free, but I mean, if he's the character and Vonnegut's telling him he's a character, is that really freedom? So it's a very philosophical book, more so than like probably anything else I've ever read. You know, in terms of like the simplicity and the complexity. I keep saying this. It's so beautiful in the way that it addresses those issues. Because like today we have, I brought up Richard Dawkins and the Selfish Gene because he also addresses people as lumbering robots programmed by genetic material and whatnot. But these people, Richard Dawkins and a lot of scientists, they present their work in such an inelegant way that it's awe-inspiring when you think about it, that you're just a set of genetic sequences that is constructed with the information as to how you should interact in an environment. And if your genetic sequences don't have the means to get you through an environment, your genetic sequences die, and if they do, then they replicate in greater frequency. It's awe-inspiring to think about, but it's not, it lacks some kind of degree of humanity and understanding. Whereas putting it in this form gives it that depth. You have a character who is living the life of a person who is kind of subject to just the folly of the creator. Now, Vonnegut was not a secular person. Vonnegut was an atheist, but for the writing, it totally works for me. I think so. Anywho, I don't know if I could really have a better synopsis for the book other than that. Just that, again, all the stories of the minor characters are ones in which he's very detailed about their suffering, like the Wayne Hubler. And here at the end, he just talks about the tragedies that people go through, like the person who had the person, like he just has all these stories just about the tragic consequences of people's lives. And these are like, this is what like reality is, but we don't hear about. Like suicides are not something that they include in police reports, but murders are. But you don't ever hear that the people all around you are committing suicide because of various tragedies or whatnot. So, anywho, that's that. So as far as like if people want to read more, if they want me to continue with this project, I'm open to it. I think I'm going to take a couple days off at least. Excuse me, that water's bubbling up. Maybe I come back in a couple days and talk about plans for what to do with this stream. So It Goes is right. So It Goes. This one is, and So It Goes is primarily from Slaughterhouse 5, right? Brad, do you want me to continue? Well, you've been here from the get-go. So I think even if it was just me and you, I think I'd be compelled to continue on and read. So have to figure something out. But I do need to take a couple days to get caught up because lately all I've been doing is trying to get this thing read at night, and I've kind of fallen behind a lot of other things. So think about what we do. And I don't like to dictate for a community like my own tastes. I'm more than happy to share. But if we can come up with a vote or something on the Discord of what would be interesting, if somebody else wants to read again. I like apologies for I saw that French word. I wasn't expecting that. I don't remember it, but that French word really caught me off guard. So, and Cha, thank you for being here. That's the kind of like what I was thinking that this is like a bedtime reading for adults. And Breakfast of Champions is like the perfect book for me for that, because like I said, it's like a child's book for adults because it's got the drawings and it's written at a very juvenile level, but it's it's not written at a juvenile level. It's got some juvenile things like the asshole scrawling and stuff like that. So the idea of doing a bedtime reading for me is interesting and something that I'm willing to do. Spell it, the word that I kept. Dude, I have a collection of those out in my garage, like legitimately ones that I had when I was a kid. Let me see if I can remember what was the first one called. I loved those books as a kid. I remember the Deadwood something or other with a little cowboy on the cover. The one was the Cave of something or other. You binge read Breakfast of Champions, or? So the word that I kept messing up on. And man, it's like his writing is generally really simple. I wasn't expecting it, but this word, the French word "soigner," we need the Canadian contingency. I don't think we're up in French Canada though. But maybe we're close enough that people can pronounce it for me. I won't be able to type the period. But what was the word that I kept screwing up, and I felt so stupid. I wish I would have reread it before I came across that word, because he said it 3 times just to punish me for not reading it. Soigner. S-O. Where is it? Now I can't even find it. It's probably not even in here. I probably was hallucinating. In Kazakh, there's so many words that I kept probably stumbled over. Kazdra miasma. Turtle time, you're here. I have to edit out part of that video before I can share it again, because my partner got mad that she was on the stream. So I have to cut her out before she'll let me put it back up. And I'm also embarrassed that it didn't sound that good, because I was using a different OBS profile and everybody's vocals were doubled over, so everybody sounded like a robot. Maybe it had something to do with this particular reading here. Turtle Time, did you want to do a nightly bedtime read to people to promote your voiceovers? You can come up with a favorite piece of literature, and we could take turns reading if you want. So this word, where is it? Somebody clearly heard me mispronounce it a number of times. I can't find it. I like that Kilgore asked him if he had a gun. I'm dragging it on. Was it we? BB. How dare you? My French isn't that bad. I can say je ne fume pas. Je ne parle pas au monde. I can say, even though I took German in college. Damn it. Now I'm gonna you guys are gonna have to say, I'll have to read it again and stumble across the word. Here it is. S-O-I. Somebody has to tell me how to pronounce this. Soigner? S-O. Soigner? I don't know. So I took French in college too. Since I was a philosophy major, you're required to take like 2 years of a foreign language. And I took French, and French is pretty easy, but because I'm an introvert, I did not like speaking French in the way that they spoke it in front of the class. It felt very pretentious. It was always like, café, s'il vous plaît, or café au lait, s'il vous plaît. And I just felt so like, I've got stage fright. I can't get in front of an audience, or historically I have. I'm trying to work on that. But it felt so pretentious that I dropped French and I took German because it seemed more just brutal. Soigner? Soiree? Soiree. That's soiree. Now I know what a soiree is. Or I know what soiree is. Isn't a soiree like a party? Elegant, well-groomed. But that was a good one that I couldn't pronounce. So soiree. Okay, there it is. The different words. Soiree and soiree. All right. Fascinating. I'm learning stuff. I like that. Okay, so there was the book. Like I said, most of you are on the Discord. If you're not on the Discord, you're welcome to chime in. Oh, David, you're not, sorry. I don't want to have you feel left out. So David is now a moderator too, because we had some moderation issues earlier with some inappropriate words in chat. And I'm expecting the mods to catch this next time. So, BB leading me astray. Swanye. You guys are so mean. You can have Supreme Moderator BB. BB's working hard. He knows that AB shows up in AB's in alphabetical order, and at any moment they can be switched. But BB went hard in the comments on the new video that I haven't bothered to. I need to go in there and respond to everybody, because I mentioned that leaving comments on the videos helps. So, yeah, I hope I didn't make Woke Mike feel too bad about that. So, because I don't like calling people out publicly. It should have been, and there's a better way to do it than I did it. I wasn't even calling him out. Yeah. So, I think that's it for tonight. And like I said, I'm going to take at least a couple days off. Maybe I'll get together in the middle of the week, same time, and we can talk about what we want to do with this little group of people here, and what might be fun, and whether, you guys can tell me whether I should do the Sunday Goofy stream or what we like, and where we should go, because it's been fun hanging out with all you guys. You guys are fun, and it's nice. It's nice to be in a little group of people where you feel at home. It's like, cheers. You guys, I want to figure out who each and every one of you are. I want to know your names. So I'll see you guys in probably a couple days, probably Wednesday. I'm thinking maybe Thursday. I don't know. It depends on. I'm told that I got to catch up on a lot of work. So hopefully then, and anybody, like I said, anybody on the Discord or an email or whatever, hit me up and let me know if you have any ideas for where to go. So thanks again, everybody, for listening to the book. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that I didn't have to read it alone. I think people do too many activities alone these days, and that we should work together to be more social. So thank you all, and I'll see you soon, and love you all. I gotta get Mike D before I leave. Mike D, you're a moderator too, even though you were hiding out, trying not to get moderator privileges. You are now a moderator, and I expect appropriate moderation done in this group of people. So, and thanks for your kind words on the, I think that was you on the Whitey on the Moon video. So.